Hello, everyone. Welcome to another 2023 SpringDocs screening. My name is Armando Zamudio, and I am the Public Programs and Events Coordinator here at IDA. For our blind and low vision attendees, I'm going to identify myself. I am a light-skinned Mexican American with messy hair, wearing a black t-shirt, glasses, and a white backdrop. Thank you to our media partners, Variety and KCRW, for sponsoring our 2023 SpringDocs. This evening, we'll have a conversation between director-producer Pete Berg, producer Mandon Lovett, film subjects Coach Rick, Coach Charles O.A. Adams, and moderated by filmmaker Bryan Fogel, whose series Boys in Blue is currently streaming on SHOWTIME. To help us grow by donating and or interested in joining IDA's global network of documentary professionals, please visit documentary.org/membership. To see more amazing films like this, please visit www.documentary.org/SpringDocs. Now, before we start, I would like to give a brief land acknowledgement. We recognize the Gabrielino, Tongva, and Chumash people as the past, present, and future caretakers of the land, water, and cultural resources in the unceded territory of Los Angeles. Thank you so much to Andrea Lust for ASL interpreting. And with that, I pass it on to Bryan. Thank you.
Pete Berg, director, producer, extraordinary multi-hyphenate talent across commercials, features, televisions, documentary. Say hi, Pete.
Hello.
And we've got Mandon Lovett, who serves as a producer on the series alongside of Pete. Also, we have the two kind of lead coaches in the series, Coach Rick and Coach Charles O.A. Adams, and going to be talking to all four of you today about this extraordinary four-part documentary series. Wanted to just start with you, Pete. Curious what brought you into this story and into this project. I've read about your background. I know you're from Minneapolis, but what compelled you to want to tell this story?
Right. Well, first of all, thank you for moderating, and we're lucky to have you. Appreciate it very much. I think, for me, when George Floyd was killed, I was shocked and horrified and very confused. And when I found out that he was killed in Minneapolis, which is a place that I have memories from, because in the very late 80s, early 90s, I went to college there. I was very confused. The Twin Cities that I remembered did not line up with what I saw happen to George Floyd. And as that experience and that event unfolded, I think, like many of us, many people in the film community, any artistic community, wanted to make some kind of creative response to that killing and to what was happening all throughout our country. And when I read an article, I believe it was in the New York Times, about the Minneapolis North football program, in a community very close to where George Floyd was killed, coached by Minneapolis police officers. Many of them knew and had worked with Derek Chauvin. I felt that maybe something was there, something that would give me a way in to some of these issues that I wanted to explore. So I flew down to Minneapolis, met with OA, got along pretty well, I think. And that was the beginning of what it turned out to be one of the most intense creative experiences of my career.
just curious, over how much time did you shoot the series?
Mandon can answer that better. He was on the ground every day, but so he shot much more than I did. But we basically covered an entire season, from early practices through the completion of the season. Mandon, what do you think?
Yeah, the shooting was about 7 months on the ground, and the edit was probably an additional 7, 8 months. But yeah, we spent a total of 7 months from about August to January out there. Maybe, yeah, February actually, yeah, 7 months.
And coaches, what was it like, for you guys having a film crew there, with everything that was going on in the community at the time, and also, with the team. Did you guys feel like it was intrusive? What was that like for you? Suddenly, having filmmakers there, to tell your guys' story.
Well, I'll speak mine, and then I'll let Rick chime in as well. Never intrusive. We're a culture staff, and we're actually a community that embraces anybody that wants to be a part of what we do. And we also, our kids have the mentality of we fool with the ones that fool with us. So we looked at this as an opportunity to not only show people how great of the kids and how great of our community is, but like we're a legitimate football program, in how we do things. So I looked at it as just definitely a great opportunity just to showcase our community and let people know how we can function with still the aftermath and how things are going on in this world.
And for me, I'm a kind of a private person, so I didn't want the cameras around me at first. But I talked to like some of the coaching staff. As long as it was about the kids, I was on board with it. I never wanted any limelight on me. I wanted it on the kids because it's about them in the first place, and that's the reason why I do it. That's the reason why I coach. So as long as it was shining a positive light on them and the program and what we do as a staff, I was cool with it. It took me a little while, but it turned out to be the best. So I was okay with it it took me a little while, but I was okay with it after a while. So.
I was taken, going in, I didn't read anything. I just like to watch. And I thought it was quite a twist when it was revealed you guys were in law enforcement. But really, I didn't see that coming, and it certainly tied the story together for me. Pete, Mandon, was that kind of what the angle that you guys were looking at, or at least when you set out, that you felt would be the twist, kind of the reveal in the series? How much did that factor into your desire and wanted to make this doc?
I mean, that the way that we unfolded the first episode and tried to delay revealing the fact that the coaches were police officers was really a dramatic tactic, and you can probably relate to that. There's trying to create an imperative to watch is always a challenge. And the idea was floated that it might be, if we could make it work, just structurally and it would work as a twist. The thing about a twist is in the back of every filmmaker's mind, you never really know if the twist is going to work because it's a twist. But I thought that when I first was presented with the idea of delaying the reveal, I wasn't sure whether that would work. I just thought people would, know that there were police officers, or that for whatever reason it just wouldn't be a compelling hook. And Mandon and I talked about it a lot, as we did with the editors, and we decided to go for that. Really just as a way of hopefully keeping people interested. As there's a lot of content out there today. And I felt that it was important that we do something in the first episode to hook the audience. And that was a large part of the way that unfolded structurally in the first episode. We knew that there were police officers. We just wanted to see whether we could create a moment where an audience would be kind of surprised and to want to tune in for the next.
Yeah,
What I
I
loved
thought it
about
was. No, so I apologize.
No. What I loved about that reveal too was that leading up to the reveal throughout episode 1, you really get to see both OA and Rick and the rest of the Black coaches as whole human beings, right? Like you get to see them as Black men, as fathers, as coaches, and they just happen to be police officers, and it all works, and they are those things. And so I think if you come in and off the bat, you see them as police officers. Policing is such a divisive issue, right? Like you're already going to start prejudging these guys and who they are and what they're about. But if we can show them the full portrait of them and who they just happen to be, as their just happens to be their job, I think it hits that much harder.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I thought it was incredibly compelling, and as a viewer, made me that much more invested in the story, because I thought, okay, these guys are just high school football coaches. They're hired by the school, and the reveal that you guys were in law enforcement, and that most of the coaches on the team were law enforcement too. I think kind of really changed the perspective and scope of the series and the work that you guys were doing, and really kind of felt compelled by your journey. Curious, this one, the last episode takes this really devastating turn, and I don't think I couldn't have seen it coming. None of you guys could have seen it coming. I don't even know how to say what that was like for you. But I guess that question is where did it leave all of you after this process of filming and going on this journey to then have D Hill, just inexplicably be shot and killed?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go first on that. Just from as a filmmaker, there really aren't adequate words to describe what that experience was like. From a filmmaking standpoint, it was devastating and horrible and infuriating, and very confusing for particularly the crew that was on the ground every day. And they had come to really fall in love with this community and D Hill and his family. I think that it was equally complicated because we knew that we were not in that community. We were close to that community, but we were not in it. And to acknowledge the confusion and pain that we all had as a filmmaking team, and then to further acknowledge that it was really nothing in comparison to what D Hill's family was going through, was a very complex field of emotions that I think everyone that was involved from the filmmaking side experienced often in their own way. And what we all agreed upon collectively was that we were going to finish the film, that we weren't going to try and make sense of this horrific, tragic event that was so nonsensical. We weren't going to try and make sense of that, but that we were going to include it into the finished product, and then see what was revealed to us, see if a meaning came out of the finished work, almost like film verite, right? Not trying to control it, but simply trying to respect it. And once that was done, we felt it important to show it to the community and to the family. Mandon went very quickly to Minneapolis with the film, and we were probably most cognizant of Deshaun Hill's parents, first and foremost, in his immediate family, but also OA and Officer Plunkett and everyone else in that community. We wanted to be told how they felt, engage that. It was really the most intense and unforeseen event that I've ever experienced in this business.
Yeah, to Pete's point, definitely it's something we never in a million years could have imagined happening. The hardest thing you will ever have to deal with. As a human being, it brought me to my knees, really, that moment. It was just completely devastating. And as a filmmaker, I honestly didn't know what to do. You don't want to overstep, but then you have to sort of like back up, take a moment and realize that you have a story to tell. And this unfortunately was part of the story. And then it's like, now you have to talk about your approach and figure out your approach. How are you going to tell the story? How are you going to tell this part? And so, Pete and I had a lot of conversations. He has so much experience with events, fallen soldiers, different events that have happened in American history where death has occurred, and like definitely leaned on him and his experience. And then going out to the community and just like letting the community have a voice, hearing what they had to say, hearing what the boys had to say, how they felt in those moments, how the coaches felt. And it's just telling the truth and just letting people express themselves. And the goal for me, the end goal was just like, how can we cement D Hill's legacy? And how can we show the world what a remarkable young man this kid truly was? And I feel proud of that. So that's a
question I had. Was there a desire? I mean, you guys had made it through the season. The outcome of the season was there. And this shooting happens. Was there a desire to kind of keep shooting, to play out what happened to to his assailant, who was white, and kind of where that aftermath went? I felt the ending was very powerful. It also kind of left open the idea for me of that continuing story. And how did you guys kind of choose when to kind of stop with that event?
One of the takeaways that I've gotten from this show, and I had understood how dangerous life is in parts of this country. I've been told it. I understood it intellectually. And when in the first scene of the series, there's a very powerful scene with D Hill and his mother and his family, and his mother is talking about her fear that Deshaun is going to get hurt or attacked or potentially killed leaving school going to the bus. And I remember that was always the opening of our show. Before D Hill was murdered, that was the opening of our show. And I remember watching that scene and hearing it and thinking, oh, okay, it's dangerous. After he was killed, I went back and watched that scene. It really hit me hard. And it wasn't that I understood intellectually what this community is going through, what Officer Plunkett, Officer Adams experience on a daily basis. I felt it. It was real to me. When I looked at it again, Tuesday Hill wasn't telling us what her concern was. It felt like she was asking for help. Please listen to me. This is very dangerous where we live. And, what we've come to understand is that as tragic as D Hill, his experience was, this community is used to this. There have been more shootings involving other players on this team since D Hill. And the community is able and forced to assimilate this, to live with this. And I think that ending the film where we did and acknowledging the tragedy of D Hill, yet moving into the next season in which, you know, we get to move on, we watch other movies, we participate in other projects, this community stays here. And that's why I felt personally the way we ended it, and focusing on the community moving forward, which they're extraordinary at being able to navigate that movement, rather than following this assailant, for example, who, you know, to me isn't worth much anyway, certainly not dignifying his experience. I had no interest in that, but focusing on the community. I thought that was the direction that we should be moving in as we wrapped it up.
And Bryan, to your point, there are so many stereotypes that are associated with Black boys dying in this country. And he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. He was in a gang. He was selling drugs, whatever. He was in the wrong. There's so much guilt associated with young men dying, young Black men dying. It was important, though, that we show that this wasn't that. This was a random encounter. It was a white person who was not from the community. It was important to dispel any notion of D Hill's guilt in this. And so that was the reason, the intention behind at least showing his photo.
Yeah, no, and I really felt that tied together and made it so impactful in, you know, not what's just happening in this community of how dangerous that it really is. Because in watching that moment and going, okay, D Hill's been shot, and in my mind I'm immediately thinking it's going to be a Black perpetrator, it's going to be gang related, it's going to be all these stereotypes that we think. And then to see his photo and realize of what a random act of violence this was, I mean, I think really kind of brought it home. And on a viewing perspective, you know, kind of immediately, you know, changed my mind about what I was thinking. What you know, officers, coaches, what's that like for you guys in the community, what you're dealing with? Very, very curious about that. You know, and how you kind of juggle this role between you know, being in law enforcement and coaching a football team, and then dealing with tragedies like this. How do you guys even begin to explain that to the kids that you're coaching?
Well, you know, it gets to the point where you can't say it's normal, but it's just the product of where we're from. Our biggest thing is just the coaching the kids and trying to give the kids the same opportunity that they see from other kids, you know, in the connecting suburbs. So there's obviously distractions, but you know, you want to help these kids out and give them the same opportunity as everybody else. I mean, that's the only way that you can kind of just keep progressing with that, just to coach kids and make them understand that, you know, that they can go to where and they can do whatever anybody else can. And sometimes it's difficult. It's actually real difficult to have to, you know, ignore the other things around them. But really, that's just the main focus. And then dealing with the tragedy, I mean, it happens everywhere. It happens closer. But these kids gotta understand that they gotta keep on doing what they're supposed to do. And then also just keeping them active so that they can stay away from the things that can be a negative influence to them.
That's got to be so difficult, though. You know, being a part of this and you know, telling these kids, hey, you know, do this, do that, don't get in trouble, don't, you know, keep your grades up, you know, focus on football. And then violence like this happens, and you go, well, they weren't doing anything wrong.
Yeah. And just like what Pete just said, when I was able to see that scene of Tuesday talking about, her fearing for the safety of Deshaun, I mean, I felt the same way he did. And I always say a lot of times, like, no other players have to go through the stuff that like our players got to go through, but we continuously have to jump hoops. But that's just how it is. Um, you can't ever keep telling your kids what they shouldn't do. Like, I mean, you got to keep giving them, being a positive influence and telling them what they should not do to keep their mind focused. But like you say, things like this happen when there's just kids, that are not involved in the things that are going on. So it's tough to deal with, and all you can be is just be supportive.
And Coach Rick, what's what what I don't know what the words I'm trying to find is. I guess how do you explain what's happening in the community and the work that you're doing on one side in law enforcement, and then coming to these kids and trying to motivate them to do their best work? How do you go about explaining a tragedy like that to your kids and your players and keep them moving forward?
Well, one of the reasons why I got into law enforcement is to possibly, hopefully, prevent things of this nature, prevent things like this. But unfortunately, you just can't. I mean, we're dealing with it every day across the country. Mainly, how I do, I just being who I am, be myself, in uniform and out of uniform. Meaning that if I see them out on the streets or whatever, what I mean, they don't get Coach Rick, they get the real Rick when I'm out on the street, even if I'm in uniform, just to let them know that whatever they need, I'm here. What I mean, I'm an outlet for you. What I mean, and just being 100. And as far as dealing with tragedy, just give them the opportunity to have an outlet, to have someone to talk to if they need to. Like I said, unfortunately, tragedy happens. What I mean, everybody's impacted. I'm still impacted from it, from the situation. But as long as I'm being who I am and being 100 with them and letting them know that, unfortunately, life still goes on. We still have to keep moving. I'm still here for you no matter what. I mean, that's the only thing that I can do for them at this particular time. What I mean, just to be an outlet for them, just to be, what I mean, continue to be a mentor if possible, continue to be a father figure if possible, especially continue to be a coach, because this is something they love to do, something that they want to do, something that I can help push them to get out of the neighborhood that they're living in, because that's the most important thing, just to get up from under, the things that they're going through, and just be around. That's the main thing, just be around, because some of the kids don't. Once you say, yeah, I'm here for you, then sometimes they fall into that the thing that, yeah, you're here for me, but when are you going to be here for me? That's the whole thing. I'm the type of person, I want to be here for you. When I say I'm here for you, I'm here for you. And I'm not going to be that person that's, yeah, I'm talking, but I'm not showing the action. And so as long as they see that action, then they can be more comfortable and know that life can be okay in the midst of the tragedy.
I was struck, Pete, Mandon, that, and I thought it was a great narrative technique, is that you guys made the football, and whether they won or they lost, really secondary, at least in my opinion, to the story. And I felt that, at the end of that third episode, and you think that the team has got its chance to go to what's the name of the big stadium?
Bank.
U.S. Bank.
The U.S. Bank Stadium, and you go, okay, this is where we're going, and you guys get through that last game kind of so quickly, not really focusing on it, and I just I really liked that approach, which was that the football of whether or not this team was winning or losing, at least in my opinion, was really secondary to kind of the story that I felt that you guys were telling. Was that what was that kind of decision for you guys and Pete and the directing of the series? Did you feel from the outset that it was going to be more about the team and whether they won or lost, or what was that decision making process for you? Because I felt it was really effective.
Right. I mean, I felt that as I've always experienced, particularly high school football, I'm very cognizant of the fact that something very special happens on that field Friday night. And Coach Adams talks about it. He says, if Friday night, don't mess with my football. Nobody's going to be getting in trouble. No one's going to be shooting anybody. There's going to be football for those hours that we're playing football. Something very special is happening. And I did think it was important that and Mandon and I talked about this often, that we worked to make sure we captured. First of all, it's a very high quality football program, and we wanted to capture that. The fact that this is a very well coached, well disciplined, well run football program. And when these kids are playing football, the reality is for these kids and for their families, this is one of the great moments of their lives that will always be. Those days playing football for their high school, winning, losing, whatever, these are pinnacle moments. And we wanted to capture that energy. However, we didn't want to turn this into a show about football. So we did look closely at those games in terms of how much emotion to put in them, how much attention to give them, and make sure people understood that the program that these coaches are running is a very elite program. And kids like Deshaun Hill very likely could have gone on and played D1 football. And we wanted to make sure that was clear. However, we wanted to then move off and be able to focus on some of the other things that you see in the show.
Yeah,
one of the things.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, no, just to your point, Brian, like one of the things that I'm so proud of in this series is that and why I think this series is incredibly important, and I hope we get as many eyes on it as possible, is that we approached issues, three of the most, I think, important issues, in my opinion, in America: race in America, violence in America, and policing in America. And on their face, those issues are very polarizing and they're very, very divisive. And if you just have a show that's just about race in America or violence in America, policing in America, you might turn some people off just off the bat. But what's so cool about Boys in Blue is that we discuss those issues and we get into the nitty gritty of those issues through the lens of football. And we use football as our entry point. And football is a game that we know and love universally right here in America. And then so we get you in with football, but then we use it as a catalyst to explore a lot more of these complex, important issues that I think we got to talk about.
I felt it was very, very effective. Coach Rick, question for you. So the barbershop, is that your barbershop? There's this point of me where I went, okay, wait, he's a coach, he's a cop, and he's got a barbershop. Is that explain that to me? Because I loved seeing that side of you. I love seeing the community that was coming together in the shop, and then seeing that basically you're doing the cuts of the players, all your fellow officers, everyone in the show. Tell me how that came about and what that is exactly, because Pete and Mandon never quite go into that, but I loved it, and I love seeing that side of you.
Well, that's me. That's just who I am. But like I said, I'm a private person. I told Mandon and the staff, I said, if you want, because they were trying to get me in a personal light or whatever, and I told them I don't do personal lights. I don't want to do that. And they was pushing and pushing. I said, okay, I'll tell you what. I said, you wanna capture me and my essence, then we're gonna go to the barbershop. And so that's where that came from. And so, it's it's just so happened OA had to get his hair cut that day. And so, it just turned out to be exactly what it was. And I mean, it's just in a barbershop in different communities across the country, that's what you kind of get. You kind of get those topics that you can freely talk about and be yourself, because those are the things that, we can bounce off of different people. We can bounce off of different aspects and, how people think, and it's free. You're free to be who you, it's free to be yourself. You don't have to sugarcoat anything. You don't have to, you don't have to be fake about it. And when I'm there, or just in general, I'm not fake about it. And those are the times where you can talk about tough subjects. And you can, you can leave it there. When you go out in the world, it's going to be different. But when you're in a barbershop, you can leave it how you feel there, and you can have your community there, and you can just bounce it off of different people and see how they think, and and get a good idea. Even though you might not agree, but still you get a different perspective of how others think, and that's a great opportunity. And I felt that it was a great opportunity to have it in the barbershop, and and just capture those difficult subjects. And sometimes those difficult subjects are not, that nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to dive into, and the sensitive subjects. And that's where we can do that. And I felt that that's the perfect opportunity to, especially during the case, and it was still going on at the time. And then there's something else happened, so we dived in, we talked about it, and got it off our chest. And it got heated, which is okay, because like I said, it's in the barbershop, and those heated arguments are gonna happen there, and it's welcome. We're not gonna, look at you any different because of what your opinion is, and because of what the facts are. And we're just bouncing each other's opinions and facts off each other just to get an understanding. And those are the type of things that in life that people need. We need to have those conversations. They're tough conversations, but they're needed, and people are afraid to have them. And that's where we did it at. So,
Do you guys feel in the last, I guess, what's it been since you guys wrapped the show? A year and a half? A year?
yeah, almost.
Yeah, year and 5 months. Yeah.
And how's it been for you guys, coaches? The cameras are now gone, and your team, your community's still there. And tell us about what's going on in Minneapolis North right now, and how the team has moved on where we left him.
Well, last season we had a really good season until the first game of the playoffs. We always have high expectations. And we got to the playoffs and probably played our worst game we did for the whole year. But I don't think I don't think our mind as a collective, as a team, was in it. And we made a bunch of mistakes, and we lost. So our season ended real early, and now moving forward, we had a lot of younger kids that have stepped up and are ready to kind of keep things moving, because now the expectation is, we didn't get to where we wanted to get to last season. So this season, we kind of gotta prove ourselves, which every year is the case, that we have to prove ourselves in some type of way. We've moved up a class, so we have to play a different class for football, which don't know why, but I'm probably one of the only coaches that's played in 3 different classes. But hey, it's just another challenge that we're going to take on and keep on going and go from there.
And Coach Rick, I know you're going to ask the same question, but what I wanted to ask also is how do you guys stay, and do you guys stay in these players and these kids' lives, after high school, after the team, because these connections that are made are so personal. I'm just curious about that for both of you guys. What's that like? And then, having these players move out of the program, and do you find yourself staying in their lives and pushing to stay in their lives?
Well, for me, I can only speak for me, but I'm just who I am. Like I said, I'm the same person on the field, off the field, in uniform, out of uniform, in a barbershop or whatever. So, like I said, I'm open. You know what I mean? The kids, whether they're in the program or not, they can still come to me. I just had a kid call me just early this morning. He was in some kind of trouble, helped him out or whatever. So, I'm just here. Like I said, I'm not the type of person where if I tell you that I'm here, then I won't be there for you. So, I mean, a lot of the kids come back from college and, they see me on the street and, and I greet them, meet them, I tell them I love them. They have a person in me that they can run to as a father figure, mentor, or whatever. So in the program, out of the program, I'm still who I am. You know what I mean? I want to keep that going. I want to have, like I said, I want them to have an outlet. And it's not about football. Football is just, something that they have. Life is beyond that. You know what I mean? You get hurt today or tomorrow, then what? I'm not going to be there because you're hurt, or, I'm not going to be there because you're not in the program. No. I mean, if I tell you I love you, if I tell you I'm here for you, that's who I am. You know what I mean? That's how I stay in their lives. That's how I keep it pushing. That's how I keep them motivated. Seeing, and especially, coming from where I came from, I tell them my story, and, they respect the story and they move forward and they respect me as such. You know what I mean? Like I said, I don't change who I am because I'm a cop. I don't change who I am because I'm a coach. That's not. I'm just who I am, and I'm always going to be that way. I'm not going to change. So, and they see that, and they I keep it 100 with them, and that's what they like. So,
This is people have asked me, what is something you hope people take away from this, and listening to Rick speak. I'm reminded that one of the main reasons I wanted to come down and start this project was because I suspected something rather extraordinary was going on between these cop coaches and these kids. And as I've done a lot of work with different police organizations. I've made films about law enforcement. I've seen some really bad cops, and I've seen what I believe to be some really fine cops. And I suspected that the police officers that we would encounter at the Minneapolis North football program would be the example of the very best of police officers. And to be able to spend time and to have the honor of being accepted into that community and go into that barbershop and go into these homes and see these very intimate interactions that, yeah, we had cameras there, but they were not performative at all. Very simple human connections, a touch, a smile, an officer driving a player out to his alma mater, his college, his Division III, his shitty little Division III college football program that he played in that he loved, and saying, you know what, this was a pretty good life. Maybe you could have this. That to me is like why we did this show. That to me is an opportunity for people to see a side of cops that they just don't get to see, which you just saw when Rick answered that question, and it's real. And I'm very, I think I speak for all of us, and I want Mandon also to weigh in, but to be able to say, here's an example of policing that works. Take a look. I think was a very satisfying component to this show.
Yeah, man. I think looking back, I entered this project with a bit of skepticism, maybe even a bit of ignorance. Like, I think most people don't really know what it's like to be a police officer. I've been in the back of a police officer, back of a police car a few times in my life, but I got to ride shotgun with Rick, and it's a totally different experience. Like, you're riding, you get that call, you don't know where you're going or what's about to happen. Your adrenaline spikes, and you're off into the belly of the beast. And I got a real sense of what and how tough their job is, and I have so much respect for these officers. They have so much power, and with that power, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with it. But at the same time, so much respect for them, and so that was my biggest takeaway from the actual production of this.
I'm still not letting him cut my hair though. Not cut my hair. Not this beautiful head.
I can take care of it, I'm telling you. I'll take care
Cut
of it.
Mandon's hair.
Yeah.
Oh man.
And guys, you know, what is that balance for you like? I mean, being, you know, in the field, and then, you know, being with these players and coaching them. How do you guys shuffle that?
Well, the biggest thing for me is when it comes to North High, like that's, to me, you know, that's my school. That's where I played. That's where my father played, my uncles, my mother went there. Like, so that's my school. So the coaching piece, it's, you know, that's what you dream of doing, of going back to your school and giving back. So, but also the balance is, you know, being able to coach and kind of just block all the other stuff out and be able to do something that you love, and that's coaching and being around football. So, you know, that's how we take it. You know, Rick made a good point of like with the barbershop and having the talks. I don't blame you, Pete, because that's probably about a 2-hour cut, regardless if you're at the shop. So you just got to be prepared for it. But you know, it's just it's pride. It's pride, and it's being a part of the community that you come from, and that's what it's valuable when it comes to me.
Let me ask you just, I guess my final question for all of you is, what would each one of you like people who see this series to take away from it? What would be the most important thing to each of you? Pete.
Well, yeah, there's a few, but I think I'm going to stick with here's an opportunity for many things, but particularly for anyone that's you know, interested in exploring the concept of effective policing and effective male role models for communities that are in desperate need of policing and of male role models. I think that the coaches that we portray and that we present in this series, these outstanding coaches at Minneapolis North, are really great examples of how things can go right in the middle of so many challenges and so many hardships and so much pain. Here's an example of some true beacons of in my opinion, real hope. And it's I think valuable to spend time with them.
I think the best films offer up a mirror to the subject. They allow the subject to look back at themselves. And I hope that we did that with this, just allowing a viewer to question their beliefs, their prejudices, how their worldview, how they see the world, and just look at it from a different perspective and give them something that they didn't necessarily expect. And so I think we did that with this. I think we offered up that mirror to the viewer.
OA, Rick?
My takeaway was just, you know, just showing the pride of our community, and then just making sure that you know, that there's kids in this neighborhood, in this community, coming from the school that are just as good as any other kids around in the nation, and just making sure that, you know, we're doing whatever we can to give them opportunities. So that was a big piece for me.
Sorry.
And I would say to piggyback on, I agree with all three of them. But my main thing would be, I said it in the first episode, before you judge me, get to know me. And I would say, before you judge me, away our kids, our community, get to know us. Come into our community, find out what we're about before you put judgment on anything. And that's my main thing. Don't judge a book by its cover. Read it, sit down, get to talk with us, or talk with the community and find out. And you'll see there's greatness. So.
Well, thank you all. Thank you, Pete and Mandon, for making the series. I hope a lot of people will watch it. I really, really enjoyed it. I was impacted by it. And Coach Rick, OA, hope you guys keep doing what you're doing. And the good thing is when you watch something that you're impacted by, you're left wanting to see more. And I really left this 4-part series going, I want to see more. I want to see what happens to these guys. I want to see where the team goes. I want to see how D Hill's family deals with this and the team, and that's a good thing. And that's when that you guys, Pete, Mandon, and everyone involved did a great job. When you leave viewers wanting more, having questions, and feeling that they saw something that was very touching and impactful. And so congratulations to all of you, and honored to be speaking to all of you, and wish you great success with the series.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.